Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of What Are You Talking About? Joining me today is Kate Gordon, aka CrossFit Kate. She is a 2-time CrossFit Games athlete, HQ seminar staff, coach and a business owner. We chat all things discovering CrossFit, working through injury, even at the games, building a business and so much more. Let me know what you think, and as always, don't forget to like, rate and subscribe to be the first to hear all about our new episodes and content. Enjoy! Kate, thank you so much for joining me today. How are you?
Hello, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Yes, very well, thank you. Firstly, have you recovered from the immensity that is Torian weekend? Because it seemed like it was a while ago, but actually it wasn't that long ago.
Do you know what? I was very lazy in terms of training for a big competition like that. And I took a lot of downtime after quarterfinals. So I went into Torian feeling really fresh and have been enjoying training more since the week after Torian than I did prior to Torian. So I've been feeling really good.
Oh, good. It's such a big event, and I know you've posted it and a lot of people have posted that like no one does semi-finals like Torian. It just looks like the most fun weekend. What's the atmosphere like? Like, do you just, obviously the results may not have been what you wanted, but do you just end the weekend on a high no matter what?
Yeah, I think I could go to Tori and not compete and just have an absolute blast. It's just such a cool group of people, especially in the community down here. Everybody just knows everybody. So it feels like a big family reunion, and you're walking around and you're stopping like every, 20 meters to say hello to someone, and then you see them another 10 times that day. So it's just a really social event. And yeah, it just makes for a really fun weekend. And it's a very cool venue. It's like kind of an outdoor tennis arena with a covering over it. So it's perfect in Queensland because that's our sunny state. So it's just super beautiful weather. Everyone's outside. Then you're inside watching this really amazing performance on the floor. And it's a great weekend.
It looks like such fun. I think probably shouldn't admit this, but if I could go to any semi-finals, that would be the one I'd want to go to and watch. Obviously, we had them in London last year, but Europe hasn't been, well, wasn't in London this year, so didn't get to go this year, but definitely Torian is one top of the list that I'd like to go to. You've been doing CrossFit for quite a while now. Can you talk about how you discovered CrossFit in the first place? What was your kind of journey to finding it?
Yeah, I mean, if I go back before CrossFit, I've always been pretty active as a kid and had a pretty active upbringing. And then when I was in university, I sort of just started getting into going to the gym. And it was, purely for looking a certain way. I just wanted to, you're constantly in this state of like, oh, I need to lose weight, especially going through university. I was out drinking on the weekends and eating whatever, and you gain weight. So I kind of came to it after training for a little bit on my own. I worked with some personal trainers occasionally, and I'd started doing, the Les Mills body pump and body attack classes. I was super into that. And I just started to see more and more like Fitspo online. So I think it was, Tumblr or Pinterest, and I'd started seeing these girls that did CrossFit, and I was like, wow. And I remember thinking like, oh, they look so badass. Like, I don't know if I want to look that muscly, but like, man, that's so shredded. And I eventually bought a Groupon. So it was just like a voucher for 30 days of unlimited CrossFit. And I think I went once, maybe twice. And eventually at the end got sucked into like a 6-month membership. And it probably took 3 months to kind of learn the language a little bit, just, the get in with all the words. And also to see progress. I think at the 3-month mark, I got my first skipping pull-up. So it was like, oh, cool. Like you start seeing the results and realizing that you can kind of get better, and there's a new goal, and now you've got this, you want to get that. And it's all just so exciting. You make so much progress early on. So that was what really kind of got me hooked initially. And then about 6 months in, I did my level 1 only by chance because someone in my gym had signed up and couldn't do it. So I basically I took their spot. I emailed CrossFit and was like, hey, I want to jump in. Can I take his spot? He's pulling out. So they put me on last minute, like a week or two before it was coming up. And then some of my time was in New Zealand, some of my time was in Los Angeles, and I was back in LA, and a gym had opened up about 3 blocks down from where I was living. And I just started working on the front desk. And then eventually, you know, anyone who's got their level 1 that's hanging out in a CrossFit affiliate long enough will be asked to coach. And I started shadowing classes and coaching. And then I started doing that full time. And that was that, like, literally the rest is history. Here I am. I've been doing CrossFit for 12 or 13 years. I started in 2011. And yeah, it's just snowballed, totally snowballed.
Did you kind of, before you started, did you ever have any intent to coach? Not necessarily in CrossFit, just in any form of kind of fitness or anything like that. Was it ever a goal for you to be like, yeah, I want to coach fitness? Or as you say, did it literally just happen?
I always wanted to be a performer. So my degree is in film and performing arts. I was a dancer all through school. Like, that was my thing. I loved to be on stage. I loved drama. I was a drama nerd at school. So I always liked the idea of being in front of people. So I would, you know, watch people at Les Mills and be like, oh, I'd kind of love to run those like classes. So I don't know if it's that I wanted to be a coach, but it was definitely attractive to me to be like, oh, I get to like teach people and be in front of people and show people how to do things. And like, I'm good at moving my body. I'm coordinated. So I can, you know, I can understand these movements and I can help other people understand them. So there's a little bit of correlation, but there was definitely no way to plan what was going to end up happening for me in my career.
Yeah, I suppose it's one of them things, isn't it? That I think this often happens with CrossFit is people, before you start, you don't realize the immensity of it. It's such a wide scale. Obviously, if you started CrossFit in the States, where I assume it's a lot bigger. I know it's grown a lot across the world. Did you kind of think when you started it in the States that you'd be able to kind of come back home and use it? Like, what was your understanding of that it would kind of spread you worldwide in a sense?
Yeah, the very first gym I went to was actually in New Zealand. So I'd kind of seen it in New Zealand first, and then I was in the US, and, you know, totally different. It was like, even back then, it was like there was a CrossFit gym on the corner of every block. They were just everywhere, especially in Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. What I did plan was, when I was looking at becoming a member of seminar staff with CrossFit headquarters, I had kind of in my head this plan that, you know, there's less trainers in Australia, more chance of me getting, you know, just an opportunity to try. And so my plan was, when I get home, I'll go and I'll try and get on staff. And a friend of mine was like, well, if you're planning on doing it when you get home, why don't you just reach out to them now and just let them know that you exist and that you'll reach out to them in a couple months when you're home. And I was like, you know what, that's a pretty good idea. So I did. And they just ended up saying, okay, well, why don't we just start your internship now? You can do it while you're in the US, and then you can continue when you're in another region, because it's the same process. So I actually started that process in California, and I did my first level 1 internship in just south of LA, and eventually came back to Australia and finished the internship in Australia, traveling kind of back and forth from New Zealand, and then ultimately ended up moving to Australia once I got the job. So yeah, it's definitely smaller, but it was big enough at that point. It had kind of exploded on the fitness scene in Australia and New Zealand at that point, and there was rapid growth happening. So it was big enough for me to have seen it and started it before going back to the US.
Mm. What was the kind of inclination to want to be seminar staff? Because that's something that it's quite a big deal for coaches. Not everyone chooses to do it. Some people probably wouldn't even really understand it. Why did you want to do it? And actually, for anyone that doesn't know, can you explain a little bit about what that involves for you?
Yeah, so the seminar staff are the members of trainers that work on the CrossFit seminars for people that want to become certified or level 1 certificate trainers. So it's like, you know, there's the level 1, there's a level 2. You ultimately go and do your certification, which is the level 3. It's an online exam. And now there's the level 4, which is an in-person assessment where you essentially run a class, run a session, and have a panel of people watching you. I haven't done that yet. That's just been released. It's only available in the US right now. But the level 1 and the level 2 are 2-day seminars. And so there's a group of trainers that run those 2-day seminars around the world. And the reason that it's a kind of well-known position is that it is so hard to get on. It is ruthless. You get a lot of very critical feedback in the process. You get really like just the total honest truth. You get presented with all of your flaws. And there's a lot of stuff that you have to learn. And really what they're testing is how adaptable are you? Like how well can you take on board feedback and apply it? And so it really is a bit of a, like, you know, initiation. It's a bit of a drill. It's changed a lot since I joined staff, but yeah, so getting on staff is hard. And then the team of staff that are on board that run the seminars are just awesome people. They are really, really skilled coaches. They obviously love and believe in the methodology. They practice it. A lot of the time they're, you know, full-time coaches or affiliate owners. And they're just really freaking good at their job. And they're just awesome to be around. You know, they're the kind of people where you're like, oh God, I just want to hang out with you all the time and have you teach me all these secrets that you have. And the reason that I ended up actually even applying or considering, you know, asking if I could be part of it or intern, was a friend of mine came back from her level 1, and she was someone that I was working at my gym. She was on the front desk, and she was like, you know what, when I was at my level 1, like I just couldn't help but think that you should have been one of those trainers. You're so similar to them, just like the way that you help people and your enthusiasm for it and all that stuff. And I was like, that sounds kind of cool. You know, I'm like, that sounds like a cool job. I would totally do that. And so, yeah, I just kind of like, you know, it was a goal that I set for myself. It was something that forced me to be better. And I just like to pursue, you know, challenges. And it just seemed like a really cool thing to do. And if I was good enough to do it, that would be even better. So yeah, that was kind of what was behind it.
It's such an amazing thing to do. And as you say, it's not, I think a lot of people, you know, how many thousands of CrossFit coaches there are across the world, not many people strive to do it. So have you always been one of these people, as you said, like setting challenges for yourself, you always want to go to the next goal? Is that just ingrained in you?
Yeah, I guess so. It's funny. I don't know if I think of it like that, but I like to find the next thing, and figure out like how can I be better, or how can I, maybe it's not how can I be better, it's probably how can I do more. Like I really like this, I want to do more of it. And I think there's a lot of validation that comes from gaining success. So for me, it's like, you know, when I pursue a harder job or try to get on staff or I pursue a competition, it's like, and I get it. It's like, oh, cool. I've just validated, you know, the sense of like, I have skill, I have ability, I have something to show the world. And it's really nice to accomplish those things. So yeah, I think there's definitely a part of me that when I really enjoy something, I want to take it to the nth degree and see how far I can go with it. And I guess, you know, I've probably said it. I just get really into it. I just get a little obsessed with it.
I mean, yeah, we all do, don't we? The CrossFit, it's funny, isn't it? Someone said to me yesterday actually about how you have a CrossFit honeymoon phase, and I was like, yeah, but it lasts a long time. People end up. So obviously you are such a successful coach, and I'll talk a little bit more about how you've kind of flown with that. But alongside that, you've also been an athlete in your own right, and you're still competing now. Did you always intend to do both, or did it just happen quite naturally?
It definitely wasn't natural. For someone who just literally said, I like taking things to the nth degree, I was very conservative in my approach to competing because I didn't really think I was an athlete. You know, I'd been active as a kid, but I was a dancer and I'd never done team sports, and I'd never done even individual like athletic sports. If you use that word, it's like I was on stage or in freaking jazz shoes, you know. It's like the idea of competing in CrossFit kind of, I saw it and I thought it was amazing and I kind of wanted it. I was a little scared of trying and failing. But I was very resistant to it because I was like, no, I'm the coach. Like I'll always be the coach. I'm the coach first. And like, you know, if I compete, it's just on the side. But eventually I kind of realized that it was just a lot of fears that I had around, you know, the possibility of not making it. I just said I'm validated by finding success in my goals. And so the idea of saying that I had a goal that there's a high chance I wouldn't make it. You know, it's like bigger risk of failing it than getting it for most people. So being like, I want to go to the CrossFit Games or I want to compete at, and now, you know, I think even the level of semifinals is an incredibly tough level to get to. It's like saying that out loud is really going on record saying, I'm probably going to fail, but I'm going to fucking try and do something big and scary. So it took me a long time to get to that point where I was like, you know what? No, this is something that I really want to do. And I get really excited by it. I've got the time. I want to invest the energy and I want to just go. I think I can do it. And so I was lucky to have a couple of mentors around me that were great to talk to throughout some of those phases. But it definitely took me a long time to get my head around it. I even to the point where we had a team qualify and compete at the CrossFit Games from my gym in 2015. So I'd already been to the CrossFit Games and was still like, well, I don't know if I'm a competitor. So it was like, we didn't fluke it. I won't say we fluked it, but we got lucky with the combination of people that we had, and we just did really well in regionals, which is what it was at the time. So it wasn't necessarily that we were all like planning on going to the games. It's just that it kind of worked out really well, and we just nailed our performance. So it was an interesting experience. But yeah, it was funny it is funny at this stage to look back and go, yeah, I still wasn't totally committed to competing after having competed at the games. It was a funny time. It was a transition that took me a while. And I wish, looking back, I'm like, God, you should have just gone for it. You should have just gone from it when you started. Like I was already 4 years in at that point, and I've just sort of gotten to the end of my competing now, and it's like I had 5 years that could have been more like 8 years. So I was just too hesitant. I was reserved. I was worried about fucking up. But I still had incredible experiences and did really well.
Yeah, it's interesting that even like you say that, because someone who like I would look at you and be like, oh yeah, she's a natural competitor. I think one of the things with CrossFit, particularly when you're not an athletic or not athletic as a child, or didn't do team sports and didn't compete. I was a dancer too, so you don't have, you sit in an exam and you have people, and it's you on your own or whatever, and I know there are dance competitions now, but that's not something I did. So when you are potentially in your 20s as well, and you going through all these things, and someone's like, yeah, go compete, you're like, hang on, what's that? This is just fitness for fun. How initially, like, what was your first competition? Did you do like a local one? Like, how did you break that initial competitive barrier?
Yeah, my very first competition was the Open. And it might have been the Open for the first 2 years. But I did start doing some local competitions. And I think when I came into CrossFit, I was pretty strong, like, straight off the bat, and not, as strong as I am now or as strong as some other girls, but just strong for a girl in 2011 when I started. And so I remember people immediately talking to me about regionals. As soon as I came in and had signed up for the Open, they were like, oh, we're going to try and go for regionals and we'll put you on the team. So it was kind of stuff that people just told me that I would do to a degree. They were like, oh, you're strong? Okay, cool. You're going on the team. You're going to be one of our strong girls. And that's kind of probably the way it's continued for, especially when I was not necessarily putting my hand up to compete. It was like, oh, she's strong. She likes to push hard. Okay, cool. She can be one of our girls. And girls are hard to come by. They still are when it comes to like putting together a team or you're trying to compete. So yeah, I think it was just that people were like, hey, you should compete on our team. You good? All right, you're good.
Yeah. So going to the games, as you say, not fluke, but kind of fluke in the timings of it. I love that you describe it as that. What was that whole experience like, if you weren't expecting it, going to the games at that time? Tell me a little bit about that weekend.
Yeah, so I went in 2015 and then I went again in 2019. So I had two totally different experiences. The 2015, like I said, it was at the time a 6-person team, and we'd qualified in 24th for regionals, which is equivalent to semifinals. And so it was like, we were really not expecting much. But we happened to have 2 national level gymnasts, 2 super strong people, and then 2 people with just like engines that could destroy anyone. And when we combined in the style of programming that we had, and just, our composure on the floor as a team was just really solid. We were just all very level-headed and really like competed well together. We were people that had trained together for months, because there wasn't really affiliate like super teams at the time. You just came naturally from your affiliate. So we just knew each other well. We had some funny people on the team, and it just worked well. And so we finished in 3rd place, and that was when we went to the games. And we were all just, we were pretty new to the whole thing and we'd never been before, obviously. So just the fact that we got a ton of like Reebok gear was like, whoa, that's so cool. And that was when it was in California. It was in Carson, which is just south of LA, there's nothing in Carson except for the stadium. But it's the original tennis stadium. Like that's where, all the old photos of the CrossFit Games are at the tennis stadium. And so just being able to be there and witness that and be involved at that time, that's a core memory for me in terms of my CrossFit life. It was really cool. Totally different to 2019 when I went to the games. I actually was competing as an individual. That was when I'd committed to competing. I was giving myself 5 years of training like a games athlete to try and, get to the top. And 3 years in, I had qualified to my first regionals as an individual and was like, I was in 16th in the open and I was like looking for like, a good competitive year. And a few weeks out from regionals, I got a call up from a team being like, hey, we've had one of our girls pull out. Will you jump on the team? And I remember being like, look, let me think about it. I don't know. Like I've been training my ass off to compete individually. The team, I'll let you know, for those of you who aren't in Australia, these are like the veterans of the sport. It was Rob Forte, James Newbury, and Maddie Sturt. And they were like, hey, we need another girl. Would you be our other girl? I was training at Rob's gym at the time. And I'm turning them down like, no, I don't know. I don't think so. I called up my same mentor that I talked to, years prior about competing. And he was like, are you crazy? People would pay to be on this team. Like you've actually got a real shot at qualifying for the games if you go on this team. And I was like, oh yeah, you're right. Okay. Called them back. I was like, yes, I'll take the spot. I'll do it. And so that was that. I jumped on the team. We'd never trained together. It was the year that you could compete as a team, but you could sub people out. It was the super teams year. It was just like, it was chaos. So people were creating super teams, qualifying for the games, and then changing members out. And it was just like people could be from anywhere in the world. So we had Rob Forte, James Newbury, Maddie Sturt, myself at regionals. We won. And then at the games in 2019, it was Rob and myself, and then Zeke Grove and Danny Horan. So it was like Danny lived in the US, and we literally met her for the first time a few days before we competed together. So that was when it was in Madison as well. So then I got to go to Wisconsin, which was really, really cool. Totally different environment, totally different place. And cool to just see the new location, really. And that year was totally different because the very second event, I think we came second after Mayhem in the first event. We had a phenomenal finish in the first event. Second event, I sprained my ankle dropping off a rope climb. And the third event was like a 7K run with a pack, and we all had to hold a rope. And we actually still did all right. I kind of pulled through and just dealt with it. And my foot was black and blue and I was all strapped up. Rob learned how to strap sprained ankles really quickly. My ankle had swollen massively. Like I was sitting with my foot in a bucket of like, I don't know what it was. It's the special stuff that helps you deal with like fluid in your body. So it was like we were doing everything that we could do. And eventually that was the year that there were cuts. So we made it through until I think the second cut, which was halfway through day 2 or at the end of day 2, I think. So we finished 11th. And the most important thing was that we beat the other team from Australia. So we still came up with a win there. But yeah, so that was disappointing, but also a really big challenge. And I took a lot from that. Like competing in pain and with an injury was not the experience I was planning for, but it was pretty eye-opening.
Yeah. How does it change? Obviously, 2015, you weren't expecting to go to the games at all. And then 2019, you were on this, as you say, super team. You've got there's a lot of pressure behind you. You've done amazingly at regionals. How mentally does it change going from no pressure to, I'm assuming, a lot more pressure kind of 4 years later?
It's hard. Like I was terrified specifically for regionals. And I was lucky. I was working with a sports psychologist at the time, Wendy Swift, who is my mentor's wife. So I had the Swifts. I had Matt Swift, who was like the grandfather of CrossFit in Australia, and his wife, who was a sports psychologist, and their powers combined, kind of made me. But I had her, and I had learnt so much from her that mentally I was pretty well armed, I guess, with tools to kind of figure out how to approach workouts and deal with the self-doubt and the fear that would come up, and just get my mind right, even when, you know, negative thoughts would come up or whatever. So the regionals was a really big test because I was easily not as fit as the others. I was strong, so I held my own with the barbell stuff, and that was good. I could contribute in a lot of ways, but I was kind of being dragged through the mud by the others. Like for a lot of it, you know, we had a run that was like a beach run into a swim into a beach run, and I was at the end of this rope just being pulled by them. Like I just remember that whole thing. Just I was terrified, and it was really hard, and it was just like this wild experience. But yeah, that was challenging only because there's probably more pressure at the regionals level or semifinals level than there is at the games, because you've got to try and make it through. And I knew that these athletes were so good that it was like, I'm not the best here. Like I'm actually probably the worst, and holy fuck, how do I deal with this? So I did a lot of internal work there, and it's not like, you know, you just handle it and everything's fine and it's all good and you're just mentally strong. It's like, no, you actually have to accept the negative shit that comes with it and find ways to let it be and not let it stop you. I think that's the real thing that, you know, your best competitive athletes can do. It's not that they don't suffer and they don't struggle, it's that they let it happen, and in fact they lean into it. They look for it. They hunt out the pain and the struggle and the high heart rate and the high breathing rate. Like they are looking for that because that is the edge of their boundaries, that's their limits, and so they're seeking it out. So I think this idea that someone is, you know, naturally competitive or just really good at hurting, it's like, no, they just let themselves hurt more than other people let themselves hurt. All of us that are resting, taking water breaks, stopping before we, you know, pick up a barbell, it's like we're just not letting ourselves hurt. We're just trying to hold it off, procrastinate for 10 seconds, you know. Like, so it was super interesting competing at regionals. The games was actually fairly relaxed. Rob's very good at being like, hey, we're here to have fun. Like we are here to have a really cool experience. We're having fun. The reality was we hadn't trained together. We didn't really know each other. So it was just like it was a bit of an experience. And I think that probably only comes with the veterans. He'd been competing for like 9 years at the games or something like that at that stage. So it was like, he'd done it so many times. It wasn't like you were hanging out with someone who was like, we've got to win. He was like, we've just got to have fun. If you're not having fun, there's no point in being here. So I think that was a really nice environment to be in, especially because I ended up being injured and being the one kind of holding the team back. So I was just lucky that I was with people that had that mindset.
Is there any point of view, like throughout that weekend when you sprain your ankle, is there any part of you that goes, I can't continue? Or is it just, let's just do what I can, move? Like, how does that, because we often watch, and I think CrossFit probably has this kind of, people will often maybe judge for working through injuries and things, but actually it's something that so many athletes do and maybe don't even talk about that often. Like, oh, you know, I had an injury that weekend, that's why I didn't compete very well. You know, a lot of athletes this year after semi-finals who maybe didn't qualify came out after the weekend and said, I was injured and this is why. Why do you think CrossFit in particular, we just power through? Like, do you think it's because of the community, because people are just going to understand? Like, is there any part of you that goes, oh no, I've hurt myself, I'm going to stop?
I think you could probably look at any sport and find those stories, you know, of people being like, I'm a little bit messed up right now, but I've committed to this and I'm going to do it. And I think that that's probably what it's about. You know, for me, when I was like, hey, I really want to get to the top, it was not that I wanted to be the games competitor. It was that was the path for me to find out the best version of myself. And so when things come up that are challenges, setbacks like not qualifying, setbacks like getting injured, setbacks like not being able to hit the lift you need to hit, whatever they might be, those are now perceived as tests rather than barriers. I mean, sure, barriers is probably just another word for it, but they're ultimately tests for, you know, this is what you're presented with. Now, how do you respond to it? How are you going to deal with this? And so for a lot of people, it's like, I've got to find a way through it. I can't just not do it. I can't go around it. I can't go under it. I can't go over it. I've got to go through it. And so I think that for a lot of athletes, especially when this is their dream, this is them living out their dream. It's like, I don't think there's another choice. I don't think the idea of like just not doing it crosses their mind, to the point that I think the people that do withdraw, it's often a coach telling them to withdraw because people won't, you know?
Yeah.
I think that there are some people that, you know, make smart decisions and can think less emotionally, like Ricky Garrett, obviously, you know, the elbow in a sling, like he's not competing and he's not about to try to, which is good. I think if he did, you'd be like, you're a fucking moron. But there's a lot of niggles and things going on all the time that you do kind of just mentally just train through. It's just kind of part of it. It's one of the tests. So yeah, I think it's present in all sports. I think you see it in CrossFit just as much as, you know, rugby or netball or gymnastics or whatever it may be. And I think that's just the nature of people that are trying to find out the edge of their limits, like find out the ceiling of their capacity. And the injury for me presented a test that I couldn't have had in any other way. You know, a hard workout or a heavy barbell, like that's a test, but I train for that and I prepare for that. A test where you're injured and you have to figure out what to do while you're injured is something you can't really prepare for. So you end up just figuring it out on the fly a little bit. And for me, knowing that I could mentally overcome the pain, like an ankle injury, like a sprain, you're not going to make it worse. Like you can kind of do whatever you want to it and it's fine. It's not like a broken bone or a fracture. It's like you can kind of still use it. It's just going to hurt a lot. Mm-hmm. And so when I knew that, once I'd had a specialist say, it's okay, you're not going to make it worse, it just really hurts and it's going to be really swollen and look really ugly. I was like, okay, so I can still use it. It's just a matter of me telling my body what I want it to do and deliberately choosing not to listen to the messages that my body is sending me, which are these like, stop now, this is painful, you cannot keep doing this, you need to slow down, you shouldn't put weight on this, like all those messages and signals. And I'm like, you know what, I'm going to feel pain and that's okay. And so I remember for the running, before we started it, I was warming up in the warm-up area or in the athlete area in Madison, and I was just jogging lightly. And the only way that I could do it was, you can't ignore the pain. That doesn't work because it's too present. It's too big. It becomes more powerful if you try to ignore it. So the only thing that I could do was every time I was about to run, I'd think pain, so that when I hit the ground with that foot, I was expecting it. And that to me was the only way to get through it. I had to anticipate it hurting rather than try to put it out of my mind and then have it hurt, you know, and be reactive and responsive to the pain. So it was like, I'm going to get a pain signal. It's going to hurt, pain, pain, pain. So I was just running with this like little loop of like pain, pain, pain every time my foot was about to hit the ground. And it was this bizarre experience of like, you know, truly having mind over matter and just being like, my body will do exactly what I tell it to do. And the pain is just a physical signal. And that's about it. So that was a unique experience or a unique test that you just wouldn't have gotten any other way. As shitty as it was for the team, it was a pretty like eye-opening experience.
Yeah, I can imagine. And I suppose you're in one of them environments where everyone's just kind of like moving, you know, you can't really, there's so many events over the weekend. I suppose, do you really actually even get a minute to stop and think, like, because it's just kind of go, 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 go? What's like, how, obviously your mind's working like a million miles an hour. Is it just like, right, okay, cool, next event, like where do you sit in terms of assessing the situation? Obviously you've just said like you saw a specialist, etc., but like, do you just keep going? Like, what's the kind of vibe when you're in it, I suppose?
I think when you're in a team, it is like that. You just go with the team. Like they're going, you're going. So you don't think, you just do what they're doing. I think if it were individual, maybe it would be different, you know, if it's just you and you're making choices for yourself. But with a team, I feel like I'm making choices for the team, and the team's ego supersedes your own. And that's the goal, you know, a big team, little me. And if you aren't behaving like that, then you're potentially a detrimental member of the team. Like it has to be, the team is the most important thing. And so with how hard you push, with working through an injury or a niggle or helping someone who's struggling, it's like you just do everything for the team. So I think, you know, for that weekend specifically, I probably had a lot of feelings around, I hope this is bad enough for me to not have to keep going. But when I realized that it wasn't, it was like, okay, well, now I'm just going to have to just try. Like, I'll just try. And maybe I can't, but I'm just going to have to try because the team are here and they've shown up and they all want to see if I can try. Like, so I'm just going to have to. So the options are almost removed, which was a good thing for me in that instance.
Yeah, definitely. So kind of going outside of your athlete career, obviously you started as a coach, and your coaching kind of brand has, particularly at Assume in Australia, has just blown up. You've got a team of kind of coaches under you. Did you always intend to start your own business, have this kind of, well, it is like your own brand, I suppose, your own community? What made you do that? Like back in the day, I suppose it was obviously just you working, but building this kind of whole brand. Why did you start that? And how is it at the moment? I'm sure you are super busy.
I'm hyper independent. I really like doing my own thing and making my own rules and having full creative control of everything I do. So I'd previously been working online for another company, and it got to a point where, I'd built up a Instagram following that was essentially giving me all of my clients, and I really didn't need this other company. And I was giving them a lot of my money. And I was like, you know what, the math doesn't even add up anymore. Like, this just doesn't make sense. I can have more creative freedom, do the things I want to do the way that I want to do it. And I bring in my own clients, so I will make more money. So I ultimately was like, you know what, I'm just going to go out on my own and do it on my own. And then that was accelerated by two other coaches that actually used to work for them, getting in touch with me and being like, hey, we want to go. And how have you done it? What did you do? Let's talk. And so it kind of was a conversation that just turned into, why don't we do it together? Like, I'm kind of doing my own thing. Why don't you guys come and do it with me? And we'll just figure it out. And so it kind of became this 2.0 version of the previous company, where we made it a place that worked the way that we wished the other place had worked for us. So the coaches were paid more, the coaches had less clients, the coaches had more control. Like, it was just a few things that were very coach centric in terms of the business rather than client centric. And I've always believed that if you look after your employees, your employees will look after your clients. Like, it's a relationship that serves the business ultimately. If you look after your clients at the cost of the well-being of your employees or coaches, it's not serving you as much as you want to try and take care of the clients. It's kind of like this ecosystem that works one direction, or not necessarily one direction, but better when you look after your people that are working for you. So that was kind of what happened. I was like, you know what, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it this way, and it's going to be my way, and it's going to be different. And here's what we're doing. And it just kind of took on a life of its own a little bit. And it's become a super challenging thing to do. I really enjoyed actually doing the, operations and admin and scaling a business and marketing and figuring all these things out that I have no experience in. So it's been a journey for sure. But it's been really nice, actually. I think, for many coaches, you go through phases of feeling a little over it and a little jaded at times. And I was definitely there towards the end of my face-to-face, like on the floor coaching. And so this was a really nice sidestep for me, where it was like, I'm still doing what I really enjoy doing and what I'm good at, but I get to do it in a different way, where I'm kind of creating a platform for people to come to and get the help that they need and get the coaching that is aligned with my values and my beliefs, without necessarily doing the frontline kind of work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And did you ever intend, because it does seem like, I mean, obviously we're halfway across the world and we see it a lot and understand it a lot. Did you ever expect it to kind of go to the scale it did in terms of your business, or was it just kind of, you were going to just move standard coaching? Did you ever expect what's happened?
It's funny because we were just talking about, like, how was the transition from coach to athlete? And it was mentally like a big leap for me to take. Totally the same thing with my business. I was playing small and I was like, I just need to, make enough money to pay my rent and put food on the table. Like, I don't need a big business. I just don't need that. And it was kind of the story that I was selling myself to make myself feel better about, not trying for more and not pushing myself to do something that you would risk failing at. And so when I realized that I was playing small, I was like, oh, I need to to run my business properly. Like I need to run it like it's a big business. That's the way it's going to work better. And that was when my partner actually was like, why don't you get a business coach? Like get a business coach. I think it'd be really good. And he had met someone who did it. And I was like, all right. And so the second that I got a business coach, I was like, okay, I'm going to take this serious. Like I'm going to do this properly. I'm going to invest in this. Like it's going to be a multi-million-dollar business. And that's the way we're going to act now. And so that's kind of what I did. And it was the same experience of like being resistant and hesitant and holding back. And so there's a lot of self-doubt and fear and worry about failure, to just being like, fuck it. You know what? Not trying is the real failure here. So I'm just going to do it. Even if it, blows up in my face, I'm just going to try and see what I can make of it. And, if I don't get there, then I don't get there, but I'd rather try and know that I'm not going to make it than, die not knowing. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. And you just figuring everything out, and you make so many mistakes. Like I'm making mistakes left, right, and center, but I have enjoyed the process of figuring out that the only way to learn is to hold yourself accountable for those mistakes. And I think it's true in every area. It's true in, your business as it's true in your relationships. It's like, if you never hold yourself accountable for mistakes, regardless of what's right and what's wrong, or who's right and who's wrong, you're just never going to be able to use that information to help you. Like you'll never be able to grow from it. So it's like, the sooner that I can realize, oh, I fucked up and I don't like the way this is working and people are unhappy, or I made a mistake and it didn't, help my clients, the better I am at fixing it. It just takes a lot of like owning your shit, regardless of whether you think you are at fault or if it's actually, your problem. It's like, it doesn't matter. Here's how I contributed. And now if I know that that's what I did, I can do it differently next time.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just been this kind of process of that. And it's been great. Like it's hard, but it's really good. It's a really cool thing to be doing.
Yeah, it's definitely paid off. And I know it gets shared around all your advice. And I think having a successful business, you're able to do that, share little nuggets of advice on social media and things. And there's another thing on social media that I have to mention, because I can't let you go without talking about it, and that you created a few years ago, CrossFit with a Sign. I know it's been a bit quiet recently, but can you just explain a little bit about why you chose to do that? Because I think a lot of people may know you from that. So why did you choose to start that little Instagram page? And it literally blew up. Did you ever expect that either?
No, I didn't expect it. Yeah, it's funny. It actually gave me a lot of followers from that page. And it's been very quiet. I don't really post anything on there anymore. It just like existed for like 18 months. And then I was like, I don't know what I'm doing with it anymore. It kind of served no other purpose, but as a funny thing, it was kind of, I guess it's equivalent to a meme page.
Yeah.
And I saw a dude with a sign and I was like, oh, that's really cool. And I was like, I'm going to make CrossFit with a sign. The handle was available and I was like, I'm just going to create the page. And I just did one post and it just like blew up, and I did a couple more, and then it just grew like crazy. And I was like, okay, so people kind of like it when you're funny and do something that's, just very obvious theme here and it's consistent and it's relevant to CrossFitters, and okay, cool. So yeah, it was just one of those random funny things that happened. And it was a good way to, I guess, like say the truth in a funny kind of manner that I knew would possibly piss people off. And I remember being on that page and on my CF Kate page, I'm like, I try to be polite and I try to be considerate and sensitive. And anyone who says something negative, I try to take their perspective and try to figure out where they're coming from. But on this page, if anybody said any shit, I was like jumping down their throats. I was like, you know what? No fucks are given on this page. This is what I say. I'm the boss here and I know more than you. So anyone that would come at me, they would get like, basically, they would get a full like CrossFit level 1 seminar sometimes, because they'll be like, well, actually. So I had a lot of fun with that page. It was, there's some good comments if you scroll into some of those posts.
It was one of them things as well, like, it's definitely, they've been shared on my group chats like numerous times, like, look at this comment. Do you ever think, because I think CrossFit's one of them sports where like social media is massive within it, you often feel like the athletes, everyone's quite honest. Is there, obviously you've just said like you've kind of separated them 2 pages, but was there any part of you that was like, oh, maybe I should hold back a bit, or were you just like, nah, I don't care, here we go? Did you have to like feel like you had to protect it at all?
Yeah, look, I think by the time that I started that page, I'd started being pretty vulnerable on Instagram already. And by vulnerable, I wasn't being mean or saying anything that was like harsh truths or tough love, but I'd exposed a lot of my own personal shit. And, it was things like I'd had a back injury and I was sharing my rehab, and that took 12 months. And then I had really bad adult acne when I was 28. And I kind of like talked about that whole journey. And then I talked about losing my period from under eating and overtraining and regaining it and all the shit that I went through with binge eating. So it was like I'd started talking about really deeply personal things that felt scary, terrifying, just horrible to talk about in front of people. And I just started doing it. And I think it just connected me with people more, and people enjoyed it. And I got a good response and good feedback. And I was like, okay, cool. I'm just going to keep on telling my true story, like just really being just honestly me, and not beating around the bush, and like, this is what you get. And so by the time that I started doing that page, I was pretty confident and pretty fearless. And, I go through waves of feeling that just fearless, but yeah, I was definitely like, you know what? No one can touch me. I don't give a shit. Like, I've said worse things to myself than anyone else could ever say to me. And I've exposed all my shit, and I'm okay with it. I understand how the internet works, and I understand that there are going to be trolls and keyboard warriors, and there are going to be people that hate on it, and it will generate a response. And that's kind of its purpose. So I actually felt probably more confident on that page than I feel even on my own page, because that was designed for that. It was designed to kind of annoy people and call people out, or like say stuff that people would be reactive to. And I knew it would happen. So I think when you know it's going to happen, you anticipate it and you're a little bit more prepared for it. So yeah, I wasn't as worried about that. I'm definitely a little bit more careful on my personal page, but even then I just feel like I've shared so much. It's like, I would almost, and I remember seeing this from my business coach actually, and it was like, rather than getting more followers, create raving fans. And you do that by being just totally yourself and being honest, and don't fucking hold anything back. Like, the more you share, the better. And you'll scare some people off, but that's exactly what you want to do. You're trying to filter people out. And so that was kind of my approach. I was like, you know what? And there's a book called Have the Courage to Be Disliked, or just The Courage to Be Disliked. And I've not read the book, but I really like the title. And I think that's kind of what confidence is. It's not that you walk around thinking you're the shit. It's that you walk around knowing you're not the shit, and you're okay for people to know it. And that's confidence.
Yeah, I love that. I'm gonna write that down. I'm gonna let you go very soon. But firstly, before I do, I'm gonna have some quick fire questions for you. But before that, where do you stand currently? I know you're obviously fresh off the boat of competing on a team at Torium, but where are you currently as a coach, as an athlete? Like, what's your kind of current goals? Are there any? Where do you stand at the moment?
I'm planning on having a baby next year. So I'm not competing next year. I'm going to have an extended break. My partner and I are going to start trying for a baby in January. So this year is like, I've got a lot of travel coming up, and a lot of just like enjoying training for the sake of training. And that's kind of it now, like, at least for a while. I would love to do teams or masters again in the future, but I think I'm ready for a break.
Exciting times. So my final few questions for you are quick fire questions. Firstly, your favorite lift within CrossFit?
Probably a snatch. When you get a good one, there's nothing like it.
Yeah, absolutely. Favorite overall movement?
Ring muscle ups. Probably. It took me a really long time to learn them, and I'm obsessed with them now. I love them. They feel so good.
Amazing. Your favorite benchmark workout?
I'm a bit of a Fran fan. I really like Fran, but I also like a lot of the girl workouts. I've always really enjoyed Nancy, just because I really like overhead squats. And then even like Cindy, I trained pretty hard for Cindy, and I just really enjoyed it when you get the results. So I mean, any of the girl workouts, but maybe Fran would be one that I've done many times. I have many fond memories of Fran, and it's just such a classic benchmark.
Absolutely. And my final question, I know you've been to the games, on a team. You've trained on a team a lot, but if you could go back and build a dream team to take to the games, who would you have on it?
Oh, a dream team. I'm a massive Annie Thorisdottir fan. So 100% I'd have Annie on my team. And then for the boys, I feel like I often think of old school athletes. I really liked Jason Khalipa. He was just such an animal. And he's so friendly. Like, he's really nice. I remember being introduced to his family and they were just like the loveliest people ever. So I probably have to go like Annie, Jason Khalipa, and then who'd the other guy be? Maybe a bit of a wild card. Maybe someone like Jay Crouch in Australia is awesome. Like, he's an amazing athlete, such a cool dude, and like he's just getting better and better. And he's the new Rob Forte, really, which is makes sense. He's the product of Rob Forte. So maybe like Jay Crouch, or the athlete that I also really like on the guys' side. I really like Brent Fikowski or Pat Ballner. That, like, you know, if you're gonna, maybe if I hadn't opted for Jason Khalipa, like having those two boys on, I think it would just be super entertaining.
Yeah, I think they seem like the nicest humans in CrossFit as well. Yeah. I think you just have a great time. No, that's a great answer. That's a good team as well.
That'd be an epic team, right? I'd be terrified again. I'd be like, I'm shitting my pants because it's gonna be so hard.
No thanks.
Carry me, guys, carry me.
No, that is great. Well, thank you so much for your time and for sharing your stories. It has been so wonderful to chat, and I look forward to seeing more from you in the future.
Yay, thank you so much for having me.